If you love classic cars, then Donald loves you.
Well, the first thing I noticed, I'm not familiar with E3 Porsches, but that tachometer says redline 8,000. Is that right? Is that original back in 83?
I think that the red line has been moved in this car.
Well, that's going to say, so,
yeah.
So the gauges are probably not all stock, because that seems pretty high. It seems it would have been around 6,700 or something like that back in the day.
But it's also evidence, again, of the thoroughness of the work that Canada does.
A little attention to details.
Also, one of the things that you'll notice in this car is also the fact that they fitted a roll bar. Because, again, this is a Targa, so he wants to make sure that you're as safe as you can be in the car.
Well, we just passed a Rhode Island Highway Patrol car. And, you know, this is a great car to race against yourself. You know, the one thing about speeding, I've found, if you're speeding responsibly, if that's possible, a lot of times the cop will give you a warning, sometimes even let you go. But if you're dicing with another car and you're doing this, that's exhibition of speed, that's racing. I mean, they hit you
it belongs on a track.
Yeah, they hit you with a whole host of charges. This is a car that's fun to race yourself. I always talk about my 63 Carrera twin cam and the joy of watching the tack move across, the needle move across the face of the tack. It does it, you know, when you drive modern supercars, and now you're going 120, now you're in jail.
Exactly.
You know? There's a wonderful feeling of moving swiftly, you know?
Yeah, and in this car, you get this great sensation of speed, the wonderful sound of the engine, and you're going 45 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour, and you're still getting a lot of thrill out of the experience. You don't have to go 120 to do that.
Yeah. And this has a wonderful linkage in the transmission, the most direct linkage ever. I mean, it's like so many people make, you know, a short shift kit and whatnot. Whatever Canepa has done here is really very nice. It's just rifle bolt, they always say, but that's what it does feel like.
And of course, I'm also a sucker for quilted or braided leather.
Yeah,
and the interior is beautifully finished.
And the idea that this yellow line is directly dead center with the steering wheel dead center. A lot of times I get in a car, the yellow line will be here. You know, and you go, well, yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, just little things. And of course, wonderful gauges. You know, it's like you always want to marry a woman with a pretty face because you're going to be looking at that across the breakfast table every day for the rest of your life, you know. She might have other attributes, but the face is really what you're looking at. And the same thing with this car. You get in, and there it is right here. Everything's right in front of you, nicely laid out, extremely sensible. The wheel does not block any of the gauges.
Yeah, which is also a very interesting thing because a lot of times when a smaller diameter wheel goes in, sometimes it blocks the view of the gauges.
Well, it does block a little bit. I mean, I think the standard wheel is a little bigger than this. Wasn't it about another inch out?
Probably.
Yeah.
So would you agree that you get sort of modern performance levels with a certain vintage feel, a character? Maybe vintage is the wrong word to use.
Yeah, I don't know vintage because when I think of vintage, I think of drum brakes, poor handling.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's thrilling and exciting, but it's not precise.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that, you know, I always love this, it's a hand-built car. Well, really, if you think a guy with his thumb going like this is better than a laser at cutting a line, I'm sorry. You know, so to me, I always kind of laugh at that. Whereas this, you get modern levels of precision. You know, there's a wonderful book out, a guy named, is it Simon Winch or something like that? He wrote, there's a book called Precision. And it's about not the invention of precision, but precision through history, starting with steam engines and water wheels. And it's really a fascinating read.
So mechanical precision.
Yeah, mechanical precision. And it deals with Morse law. You know what that is? Where a computer every year. You've got to double the output and half the size, to the point where you have microchips that you can't even see. They're so tiny.
Exactly, yes.
You know, I mean,
nano computing.
And that kind of technology has come to the automotive world now. I mean, the idea of breaking an engine in is almost nonsensical.
Quaint.
Yeah, I mean, engines don't burn oil anymore. You know, in the old days when you bought a sports car, especially something like this, back in the day, a quart of oil every 750,000 miles was not. That was all right. That was fine. You know, a little puff of blue smoke meant, okay, things are getting lubricated. Yeah. But you can't do that anymore.
It is very interesting thinking about not only the way cars are built, but the maintenance requirements, something that you and I have talked about a lot, and how different it is. I can remember not that long ago that there was this first owner break-in period. Cars were delivered with break-in oil that had to be changed at 1,200 miles, and you know, all these things that are no longer the case. And on the one hand, it obviously makes a car a lot more convenient to use, but on the other hand, it also removes a level of involvement again.
Cars have always been fast. It's getting them to stop, go around corners, and be comfortable. You know, like I'm a big Duesenberg enthusiast, and that you change the oil, and it's a light that comes on every 750 miles to change the oil, which was an improvement because it used to be 500, you know?
Well, you think about how people use cars. To take a 500-mile trip in a car was a very big adventure.
That's right. Yeah.
So, you know, that's like the fact that many people will own or perhaps lease a car where they will never have the oil changed.
Yeah.
Because the oil change interval is longer than the actual lease period on the car.
When I was a little kid, we had a relative, Uncle Alec, who drove Chryslers. And he would brag that because he drove as a salesman, you know, you're driving 12 hours, you know.
Yeah.
And he would be exhausted, and the car was still fine. Because back in his day, a car, you couldn't pound on it for 12 hours. It was, something would go wrong, you'd break down. So in the mid-50s, when he finally got a Chrysler with a Hemi in it, oh my God, this is a car, he could just drive it everywhere, and it didn't break down, and it didn't get tired, it didn't feel worn out, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they're always equating it to a horse, you know? It's so funny for me to think of the 80s as vintage, but that just shows you how old you're getting, you know?
Exactly. There was still a time when you and I were first playing around with cars, when there were people that said, oh yeah, I remember my first car was a 1920 some odd, and it was 1940, and I bought this 20-year-old car and drove it until 1956, when I got a 1930 something, and
yeah. I remember going to Pebble Beach in the early 90s, and a friend of mine was going to bid on a 59 Cadillac. That was sort of the height of when they were, it was all restored. And I said, how much you bidding? He goes, 75. And I went, 7,500? Boy, that's crazy. I mean, we used to buy him at Demolition Derby. He goes, no, 75,000. I went, 75,000? Because I remember when that you'd look for those at the junkyards to do the Demolition Derbies in. Because, you know, they're strong and you can crash them all day long.
You wouldn't be knocked out in the first round.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You wanted the Imperial. That was the one with this big chassis. Strong chassis.
So this car impresses you as well, does it?
Yes, it's very impressive. You know, it's so funny because vintage cars were built at a time when technology was expensive and labor was cheap.
Yes.
You know, you could have a Bentley 8-liter, and the fact that there were like 125 little nuts around the water jacket there, well, some guy's getting paid 10 cents an hour to tighten. That's no big deal. You know, to work on that car now, oh my God, it cost you a fortune because it's all labor intensive.
And now there's also those people, we have to acknowledge them, who'll be watching this video and say, well, yeah, it's a neat car, but why modify a car that Porsche has made? Because then it's no longer an original car. And so what do you say to those people?
Well, what I say to those people is that Porsches are expensive, but they're not rare. There's enough of them around that you can really do whatever you want. I mean, the real example now is in the Paris-Dakar race, where people would take a 911 jacket 3 feet off the ground, giant tires with big,
big skid plates underneath.
Chunks of rubber, and you go, oh, what a terrible way to ruin it. Well, no, it's just another way to go racing with Porsches. So, I have no problem with it. It's your car, do it as you please. But ultimately, originality will pay the biggest dividend. Something like this is an anomaly because it's done by someone with an impeccable reputation. Mm-hmm. It's one of only a few. Anybody that could afford to do this to a car, to this part, you'd say, why not just buy a new one? Because the new one will outperform this, certainly.
Yes.
You're just looking for something
that has a certain character.
It has a certain character. Or it harkens back to a certain era, I mean, but when I was a little kid, my uncle owned the Green Tree Country Club in North Shell, New York. It was down by the water. And I would go and just watch these Imperials and Buick Roadmasters and even Corvettes and all kinds of fancy, turquoise-colored cars come in. And, it's just the parking lot was the most... And I thought being a valet, that'd be the greatest job ever.
Absolutely.
So whenever I see those cars, that's what it reminds me of. And if you were 13 in 1983, your eyes popped out,
And it also, I think, harkens back to a level of, again, personal connection. So the personalization of a car to make it what you want it to be, your vision of it, while still, as Bruce Canepa has done, remain true to the spirit of Porsche and what Porsche stands for as a manufacturer. I think that's a great thing. And whether you would get your money back for the money invested in this, to me, is almost beside the point.
Right.
It's the enjoyment of the drive that pays you back in a car like this.
Well, getting your money back is a fairly recent thing because, really? Plus, the car has a level of quality that probably did not exist originally. It's funny to me when you drive a mid-'80s Chrysler K car and you put on the turn signal. It's like cracking the wishbone on a turkey,
No, a chicken.
A chicken. It's just crack. It's the most annoying sound. They realize all that stuff now has to be. Well, I guess what I'm saying is I'm so thrilled that everybody in auto companies now is an engineer.
Yes.
It used to be guys from Whirlpool or Maytag, and they're in marketing, and now they're selling cars. Now everybody, like a GM, Mary Barra, Roy, everybody is an engineer, and they're out testing cars and driving cars. I mean,
and that makes such an incredible difference. They're engineers, and they're also the end user. They understand what a customer wants when he or she gets behind the wheel.
Right. I mean, you could buy a new Porsche for less money with 600 horsepower, but that's not the point.
Not at all. It's hearing the wonderful sound of that engine. It's unmistakable. And just feeling what this car has to give. You're so much more connected to the road. And I think that this is sort of an ideal fusion of the vintage and the modern.
Right. But it's one of those things you either get it or you don't.
Yep.
Like you get tailoring. To me, this shirt's good enough. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the difference between it. But to you, it's important that the fit, the
fit, the line, the weight, everything.
The suit has to look and act a certain way. To me, that's not important. This is fine. I dress like Columbo most of the time. But that works for me. But in a car like to this, for me, the interior and the seats are wonderful, but it's really just about the handling and the driving.
It's all a piece. The tailoring counts.
Yeah.